Welcome to The Wellthy Advisor, a podcast from wealthmanagement.com focused on advisors' personal well-being and healing. I'm Diana Britton, managing editor of wealthmanagement.com, and in this podcast we explore some of the struggles and personal development issues facing advisors and financial services professionals, and how to get to a place of healing for mind, body, and spirit. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Wellthy Advisor podcast, and thanks for joining us today. For those of you who have been listening for a long time, that name may sound a bit foreign to you, but the podcast used to be called Transparency with Diana B., but we recently changed the name to sort of better reflect what this podcast is about. Either way, I'm so glad you joined us today. And as you know, this podcast is focused on financial advisor, health, and wellness. And today's guest is just a perfect fit on that score. Her name is Stevyn Guinnip. She's the CEO and Wellthy Advisor at Grow Wellthy and creator of the Wealth Academy. So Grow Wellthy, spelled Wellthy, is a health coaching company. And, this podcast episode may look a little different from others that I've done, where I tend to interview advisors and financial services execs about their personal struggles, their stories, and journey to healing. But Stevyn, like I said, she's actually a perfect fit here because this is what she does for a living. She helps advisors live a better life now, helps them towards a better retirement in the future. And, we're going to get to how Stevyn helps advisors in a moment, but she actually has a very interesting story of her own, and her journey has really shaped who she is and the work that she's doing today in the wealth management industry. Stevyn, just thank you so much for being here today and being on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Diana, for inviting me.
Yeah, so can you start by just, telling us a little bit about your background? It's a pretty interesting story and how it sort of shaped the work that you're doing today.
Yes, thank you. There are really two stories that brought me to this intersection, and I'll briefly tell both of those just to understand a little bit further. My beginning starts at 11 years old when my dad became an advisor and moved our family down to a city where there had been two advisors who had started an office and had failed previously. This is the environment in which I was introduced to this industry, and I grew up watching him hustle and work really hard and grow his business. And although I'm not an advisor, I call it my secondhand knowledge of the advisory world. And what I saw after the first 10 years was a deterioration of his health. It's the point where he had been the thickest, and maybe the least sedentary, the most stressed, all of the things that kind of go along with that. But then we got to have fun. Like we got to go to some of these advisory event, top producer things. And the most impactful story that I remember outside of some of the client stories is being in Scotland at an advisor event. And one of the top advisors there that everyone looked up to was sitting beside me on the bus, and he was miserable. He was there alone. His relationships were broken with his wife and his children, and he was sick with chronic disease. And I just had a moment where I was a teenager and thought, if this is the pinnacle of success, we've missed the mark. So this sits with me for a long time. Through the years, I became an exercise physiologist, and I was like, we're going to fix this from the other angle. We're going to approach it from a health side so people can not only have their wealth, but also have their health. Well, it came to, this is my second story, being in Australia. I have two small children. My husband, we're half a world away from family and friends, and I become septic. I had a health crisis. I almost died in that hospital, had to have a blood transfusion, 5 days in the hospital, and long recovery from that. What happened to me in one day is what happens to all of us in maybe 2 or 3 decades. It's an aging process, and it's where your hormones change, your muscle mass deteriorates or goes away, your gut health deteriorates and goes away, and that all causes health problems in the future. But it happens so slowly, Diana, that most of us don't realize what's happening because it's like the frog in the cooker, right? And it happened to me overnight. And it was devastating and it was horrible. And I've never wished it on anyone, but it gave me insight to be able to be at this place to help people who are going through the aging, the stress, all the issues that we deal with. Because as an exercise physiologist, I was not able to help myself. For 2 years, I continued to gain weight, especially around my stomach. I had chronic pain everywhere. I had all kinds of issues I won't go into. And it made me have to forget everything I learned in my master's degree, in my gold standard certifications, go back to the research, go back to common sense, and say, oh, wow. As an industry, my industry, health and wellness, has missed the mark too. So what are we going to do about this? How can we redevelop something that serves the people? Because the needle has not moved in my years in the industry as far as healthy versus unhealthy. We're not making headway. And that's when I realized pretty profoundly that the parallels between health and finances are almost identical. And the principles can transfer very, very easily. And that's when I created Grow Wellthy, to say, hey, look, we can push both of these fronts forward and have what we need in life and in retirement by doing this.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's just complete intersection of all the things that you do. And this is a big reason that I launched this podcast originally, because in 2010, our publication wrote a piece called Sex, Drugs, and Financial Advisors. And it was where we talked to a clinical psychologist about, the financial services industry and about, how stressful this job is. And, how advisors are more prone to addiction, depression, obesity, and other things than folks in other professions. And, I was actually looking at a FlexShare survey from 2018 that found that financial advisors' stress levels were 23% higher than national norms. And, for male advisors, it was even more pronounced. Their stress levels were 26% higher than the national norm for men. Female advisor stress was nearly 18% higher than the national norm for women. And some of the causes of that stress were political and market uncertainty, regulatory changes, compliance concerns, pressures on fees and margins. So, a real issue. And I think that the work that you're doing is great. What do you, there's this feeling that advisors kind of have to die at their desk, right? And I know you've talked about that. And how do people sort of overcome that feeling that they have to die at their desk?
Well, I don't think that anyone tries to do that or that they feel like they have to do it. It's kind of this underlying myth that they don't realize that what they've been told they have to do in this industry, they don't realize that it's going to create the die at the desk moment. And there's a disconnect there. And before I go a little further on that, I want to comment on your stats. I read a stat recently on the stress in 2008 when that housing bubble happened. That was pretty stressful for this industry. Right now, stress for this industry is 31% higher than it was in 2008.
Wow.
And that shook me. I was like, oh my gosh, we really have to address this. And it's funny, I actually just talked to an advisor today, right before this, who's new in the industry. He's 5 years in, and he said his stress is at a 9 on a scale of 1 to 10 all the time. And he's really working hard to try to build his business. And he said he has a mentor who's giving him ideas of what not to do, not to follow his path in certain ways because he doesn't want to have that die at the desk moment. And so what happens is that advisors come into the industry, they're told, hustle 5 to 10 years, and then you can just, post. And everything else falls into place is the assumption. But I've interviewed over 275 advisors on this specific topic, preparing for a book I'm writing. And that is absolutely a lie. It is not the case. And most people think they have more time, or they just never get back into themselves. They kind of lose themselves on the journey. And so it's so, so, so important to start in the way that you intend to finish. And that's what a lot of people don't see. They start in one way, the hustle way, and then they finish in the burnout way. And that's what we're trying to change here.
Yeah. I mean, I'm so, I'm just so interested in what some of those advisors said to you in your interviews. And what were some of the top takeaways that you got out of those conversations?
Oh my gosh, the learning goes on and on. I thought it was kind of just an exercise because I have a coach that's helping me get this book done, and he said you need to do these
Mm-hmm.
interviews, and I was like, oh really? I know the industry and I know what I'm trying to say. He's like, no, you need to do
Yeah.
this. Oh my gosh, Diana, it's been the best experience because I've learned so much from them. And some of the top takeaways that I'm seeing is people need a sounding board. They need to have people who are in their corner. And there's a quote that I heard from one advisor. He said, choose your thoughts by choosing your people. And so however you're going to think or however you want to think, you have to surround yourself with those people. And so that's what I'm hearing a lot is the ones who are successful, they either have an accountability partner, they're in some sort of a group, they go to Orange Theory. I never in a million years would have guessed how popular Orange Theory memberships are to the advisory world. And Orange Theory is all based on heart rate. And they get a report when they're finished, and it's done in a group setting. And it's incredibly motivating for this group of people, maybe because it's competitive. I don't really know yet what the reason is, but that's
Mm.
one thing I was like, wow. Because it's, if we took just the average American, they're not going to have that many people that, I probably would guess 60 to 70% of the people I interview who exercise are going to Orange Theory. The majority of those also are in Peloton too. They have a Peloton bike, and I think it's the community and the
Yeah.
competitiveness of it. So finding something that works with the way they think, I think has probably been the biggest eye opener for me. One of the advisors that's really successful with his health, he had a crisis moment with his doctor where he was diagnosed with full-blown diabetes, not pre-diabetes, but like you are in diabetes right now. He panicked and said, what do I do? And he's like, well, you've got to make all these lifestyle changes. I'll give you 6 months. And what he did is he treated himself like his own client. And he said, I'm going to schedule a quarterly meeting with myself, and I'm going to go over
Mm.
whatever key performance indicators it is that I need to be tracking. Everybody might have different ones that they're looking at, waist circumference or blood sugar or weight or whatever that is. And I'm going to start tracking my trend. One of the most exciting things that happens is that when you start to become aware of something and add a little bit of curiosity to it, sometimes the changes just manifest themselves and align themselves up if you can just shine a spotlight on it. And just having that accountability meeting with himself every quarter, he's now completely normal. His diabetes is gone, blood sugars are totally fine, and he's lost 30 pounds to boot. There's so many stories out there. One advisor, I'll tell you one more story. He started noticing that his health trends, his energy level, his stress was out of control. So he moved out of the city
Mm.
into a small river town, just maybe 20 minutes or 30 minutes outside of town. And he bought a house kind of up on a hill that required him to go down these stairs and then take walks along the river and then back up the stairs. And just changing his environment helped him go down 40 pounds and begin to normalize all of his blood numbers as
Mm.
well. So the ones who are successful are rearranging and changing their approach to their health.
Hmm. That's interesting. Well, Stephen, walk us through your consulting program. How does it work? What does the plan look like when an advisor, comes to you? Because I think that you have a very different approach. I mean, it's not just, download the Noom app and, get a Peloton. It's a very, it's tailored to this industry, and I think it's important. So walk us through sort of what that plan looks like.
Yes, there's 3 parts to the program, and anybody can do this outside of my program or within it. We just help hold you accountable and give you a safety net. But there's 3 parts that if you can do these 3 things, you will be successful through the decades. One of them is to treat your health as if it were part of your retirement investments. Treat it like a bank
Mm.
account, like an asset. And that means know your numbers, know your trends, and track that so that you can, grow it and protect it. That's number one. Number two is to engage in what I call high ROI activities. So high return on investment activities are things that stack lots of benefits in a short period of investment of time or money. And we all love that when it comes to money, but we don't really think about it when it comes to our health. That, if you are going to do something to improve your health, maybe going to the gym and exercising, but driving and changing clothes and, waiting for the equipment is a 2-hour investment of your time. Doing something at home, going for a 15-minute walk right after your meal with your nose breathing is actually a
Mm.
better investment of your time because of the
Mm.
physiological responses. So this group is really, really busy. And that's the number one thing I hear is I don't have the time. When I find the time, well, you're never going to find the time. Let's just be more strategic and build stackable high ROI activities into your day. And that brings me to the third part, which is to automate the process. Learn how to pay yourself first so it gets done. Most people are not consistent. They might do something, go to the gym once or, put down the cookie one night a week or, whatever that thing is, but it's so random. It's not cohesive, automated process. And so that's what we need to do. And I've noticed that there are 4 times of the day that you can do that. And it's not going to the gym. Like I said, it's the first hour you're awake, what you do in that morning routine, the first or the last hour that you're awake, what you do right before you close your eyes, what you do with your meal routines, because timing and routine is important, not just what you eat, and then what you do while you're at work in those 8,
Mm.
10, sometimes even 12 hours. What are you doing at work? Because health is won or lost in the place you spend the most of your time. So when I spread this message, people are like, wait, I was going to join the gym and I was going to go on this diet. And I'm like, no, let's like, we can. I have a client that's lost 50 pounds who's never even exercised. We can do
Mm.
this very easily and make massive improvements. So the way that we do that is called the Wealth Academy. And people can join the Wealth Club. It's a play on words, health club, wealth club, at 4 different levels and get the support that they need. And I work with people for a year. They
Mm.
come in and we go through the ups and downs together. We learn these 12 principles of finance that you can apply to your health. And we just get it on autopilot and reach their goals in that year. And then they're smooth sailing after that. So that's really how I work with people. And it's been incredibly transformative, not only for me, this like just the joy of seeing my clients build a 401k for their health is what I call it. But then they become the mentors for their 100 families, 200 families, and
Mm.
help to spread that message to their people so they have a more successful retirement too.
So is the idea that if they are, eating better and incorporating more exercise into their daily routines that they will be less stressful or less stressed out, I guess? Or I mean, I guess I'm just wondering, are they scaling back on work at all so that they're not, working, 80, 100 hour work weeks, or I don't know.
Yeah, it's like a two-edged sword here. We have to look at people can't find the time to actually take care of
Hmm.
their health, but if they took care of their health, they would be more creative and more productive and have more time. So, or maybe it's
Okay,
like a
gotcha.
chicken or an egg situation. And wherever they choose to start that path, one resource that I think is really valuable to people is Dr. Travis Perry, Parry. He does the Balanced Advisor podcast
Mm.
and wrote a book called Achieving Balance and works on that whole time management side of things, which is very valuable. We do that a
Mm.
little bit through what I do, but really understanding that we're not ever going to find the time. We have to make it. We have to make that
Mm.
time and we have to carve it out and be selfish and protective, not for ourselves, but for the purpose that we're trying to achieve. And so when people do this, They think that they have to do one set of things to get healthy, but when they realize that it's much simpler than that, and when you incorporate getting the better sleep, because when, just for an example, when you sleep well, that's when you burn your fat. That's when
Hmm.
you repair your cellular structure and improve your the metabolism, the powerhouse of your cells, which is called your mitochondria. All of these things repair, the damage goes away, your body cleanses itself. So sometimes, and I call that your emergency fund. We first step into the second week of the Wealth Academy as your emergency fund. What are we like? Let's get the basics. How are you breathing? How's your hydration? And we got to get that sleep online. Once we start to do that, we we then have more to work with during the day. And then we can start to
Hmm.
look at what are we putting in? I call it your money meals. Are they fulfilling all the buckets of what we need your food to do for you? And it's a really cool tool that I use called Daily Dozen. And it's free app. You guys can all download it. And it's based on abundance versus cutting out food, not getting to eat certain things. It's all about how much of this can you get in your diet. And when you
Hmm.
shift your paradigm like that, it's not so much guilt or missing out, FOMO. It's more like,
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about the cookie. I can eat the cookie if I want, but I'm trying to get as many of these things in my food. So we're just trying to make it awareness, curiosity, fun, easy, and so that this stuff actually happens and gets done.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, my husband is he lost a lot of weight, and he says he eats more now than he ever did before. It's just what he's eating is just completely changed. So I know, a lot of people look at body mass index, as a way to measure their body fat, but you have a little bit of a different way of measuring it. What do you think is the best risk predictor?
I do. BMI, body mass index, is used by insurance companies and by, most of the country. They think that that's a good measure. I don't like it at all because it doesn't account for enough of your health and it can be inaccurate many times. So, what I love to look for instead is waist to height ratio. And it's
Mm.
really simple. All you do is take your height in inches and divide it in two, and that your waist measurement around your belly button should be less than 0.5. It should be less than half of that. So take your waist and divide it by your height, and it should be less than 0.5. And I have a
Okay.
chart where don't have to like do math. You can actually just find yourself on the little chart. But you want to stay in the green zone. And most of the people that come to me are in the yellow, or actually mostly are in the red zone, which means their waist is more than half their height. The reason this is really, really important, Diana, is because your waist thickens as a result of blood sugar issues, gut issues, and stress.
Hmm.
So if we measure the waist, we know that if your waist is shrinking, that those three systems are starting to get under control again. And it's just a really easy way to see a snapshot of the health. So that's my main goal, is that, clients come in that we're trying to lose, maybe 3 to 10 inches around the waist within that year, depending on what their goals are. And when they do that, not only is their health risk profile drastically improved, but their confidence just it just soars, because what do most people want with their body? If you like, there's two, let me back up. There's two reasons people come to me. One is longevity and the ability to live long. The other one is looks. So looks and longevity. Doesn't matter which reason it is. If you shrink your waist, everybody's happy, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and what you said about your husband is absolutely true. I have people that come in, and I make them do like this login through my HIPAA compliant portal, and we take a look at it after the first week, and they're not eating enough, and they think
Hmm.
that they need to eat less. So we always have them eat more with their first meal. I don't like to call it breakfast because it may not be in the morning. It may be at 11 or noon. I don't know. There's lots of different ways to have eating and fasting windows. But the first meal, they're almost never eating enough food. And when we get
Hmm.
that first meal fixed, the rest of their day just kind of settles into a really nice rhythm.
That's interesting. Yeah. So I know, I talk a lot about, on this podcast, a lot about just emotions and how people are feeling through their life and experiences. And so how do you, sort of help advisors overcome some of those emotional barriers to getting healthy?
Yes, a lot of people come in to work with me and they've already seen so many failures. They've tried so many different things and they just haven't been successful with their health that they come in kind of beat up. And they're just like,
Mm,
oh, I don't know if I can do this. And if I can do it, I don't know how long I can keep it up. And then honestly, do I really even want to live the life it takes to be healthy? Because it's so hard. Like that's the
mm-hmm,
attitude they come in with. And there's so much guilt. It's, they're carrying around a 50-pound weight on their shoulders of the guilt of I should have done this and why can't I? And I don't have any willpower. So people think that I teach others how to be healthy. Honestly, what I teach them is how to think. And that
mm,
mindset piece is really important. And it starts with forgiveness and a no guilt zone. And I keep saying this word curiosity because when you pose a question in a non judgmental way to yourself, your subconscious mind gets interested and
mm,
begins to work on finding an answer to that kind of underneath the surface. And then you all of a sudden you come up with things that start working for you or new ideas you hadn't thought of before. And it's so much less of a to-do list as much as it is a discovery. And that journey is so much more enjoyable. So I'll give you an example of one person that was working, gosh, she was at least 12 hours a day. And she's like, I know I need to go for a run, but I'm just so exhausted and I'm so stressed. And
yeah.
switching that mindset because she's full of guilt, right? She's thinking, I need to go do
Mm,
more and I'm failing again. When really, when
mm,
I gave her permission that you need to go take a nap, have a cup of
mm,
tea and sit outside and listen to the birds. And she's just like the relief that comes over when when you realize that you're doing a good thing when you create the margins in your life allows all your chemical hormones to change at the
mm,
source. And then once we can kind of lower that cortisol and start some dopamine and serotonin and all those good feeling hormones coming out of your body, then your hope elevates, your abilities, your energy, all of this stuff changes that your body then the alarms stop going off and your body then thinks it's safe and it can start to release the fat or help improve your emotional control or how you deal with people around you. One of the funny things, I don't know how funny it is. I find it interesting, but they can track marital arguments, like husband wife arguments, many
mm,
times to blood sugar. To
mm.
blood sugar, like to how you're
Yeah.
eating and how you've treated your day. It has almost nothing to do with the argument as much as the ability to control your emotions and think logically because of what's going on with your gut and your blood sugar. And so once we start to stabilize these things, there's a mental load that's lifted off of these people, and mental health improves as much as physical health.
Yeah. So next time I get into an argument with my husband, I need to tell him to go eat a cookie or something, or maybe, I
No,
don't know.
because then
Let's
the fight will
something
come
else
back
that will.
later. Yeah. Yeah, I always tell people break the cycle. Like just you're about to start an argument with your spouse, like drop down and do 5 push-ups. And then everybody will be shocked and starts laughing. And then the cycle's been broken and you can like have a logical conversation.
Yeah, that's so funny that you mentioned that because my husband actually does do push-ups randomly, like in the middle of the day, when he gets stressed out at work.
Oh, that's
And I
so
know his
good.
his old his old job used to have a gym, so that he would just go into the gym. But I mean, now he's at home, so he has a bunch of workout equipment right next to his desk, which is really funny. So, anyways,
Yeah.
this it was so interesting. I mean, I just wanted to go back a little bit, Stephen, just to your experience 6 years ago, and sort of end on this note, and tell us a little bit about how you overcame that that health scare in your life.
It was, yes, because I was, quote, healthy before that, like healthy systems. And so I was just completely ill-equipped to have a body that was new and different and not functioning. So I
Mm,
started off kind of skinny fat after that surgery. I lost all my muscle, um, and I was shedding my entire gut biome. Like all of that
mm,
good flora and fauna, I was shedding it all out. Like the antibiotics I was on for the 6 weeks were just completely killing everything inside of me. So when you get that empty with no metabolism, no gut health, all of those things then start gaining in the stomach, like talk about mental health taking a total nosedive. And especially when
mm,
it's my career. This is what I do, and I couldn't figure out what to change or how to do it. So I went to the gym. I tried to exercise my way through it. I tried reducing calories. I tried, the fruits and vegetables and doing all the things and cutting out the junk. It really just didn't work until I started to address my mindset that it was
mm,
about me against my body. It was,
mm,
I'm going to battle this. I'm going to make it work and push myself into submission. That was the first thing I had to change and say, no, my body actually wants to be healthy too. There's no reason that it wants to be sick.
mm,
Every time I get cut, that wound will heal. So we have to figure out what's causing me to stay bruised and cut. How can we let the healing process begin? And how can I step into these physiological, streams or rivers that are already there? We're not going to try
mm,
to walk upstream, right, and fight this current. Let's get in line and just work with it. So that was a mindset change. Once I realized that, I was like, okay, what are the main systems that are working against me? And it's almost always starts with blood sugar and stress. Like those two things are what I did. So I was like, okay, how can I start controlling the blood sugar? And I went back to the research, and this is all documentable research that not sitting still for extended periods of time was step one for me, because you're at a
mm,
desk working 8 hours a day. That long bout of not moving is like, imagine your cell phone and it goes dark when you don't touch it or use it. It kind of turns off to save batteries. That's what your health does. It switches off your glucose uptake and switches off
mm,
your oxygen uptake. And all these things just start to turn off. So you have to kind of touch the screen of your health every 30 minutes and at most every
mm,
hour. And that means for at least a minute, you need to get up and move and do something, stretch, go get some water, walk around, walk on a call, do something. And if you can do that throughout your day and break up those sedentary long bouts into shorter amounts, that's more predictive of chronic disease prevention than spending an hour at the gym every day.
mm.
So
Wow.
that was transformative for me to realize that I just needed to it's called NEAT, NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And when you are able to dial up your NEAT, just your low level movement throughout the day, it's significantly correlated with reduced weight gain and chronic disease and all cause mortality. So that was step one. Then the next, probably most important thing was for me to realize that there is a time for everything. There's a time you should eat, and you should eat well, and you should eat thoroughly. And then there's a time when you should not eat. And when your body is doing both of those things at the same time, it's trying to eat and digest and repair and do all the things all at the same time. It's like multitasking. It doesn't
Yeah.
do it well. If you
Mm-hmm.
can separate those into eating windows and fasting windows, your body can do its job better. It can repair, it can burn different kinds of energy sources, it can maintain blood sugar and stress. All of this stuff helps. So that was like the next big aha moment for me. And your listeners, if you guys want to try this on your own, obviously, I have to say this, but obviously, if you have a health condition, talk to your doctor. But generally speaking, if you can split it into half, 12 hours of eating, 12 hours of not eating, then that's a good place to start.
Mm. I think I'm going to go stand up for a little while after this podcast is over. Well, I'm afraid we're just about out of time, but I'd like to thank my guest, Stevyn Guinnip, for being on the podcast, sharing her insights today, and just some really helpful ways that advisors and all of us, can live better lives. So Stevyn, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much, Diana. This has been a really fun thing. And I'm loving I've listened to your podcast. I'm loving that you're out there spreading this message. So a heartfelt thank you to you.
Yeah. And I just, it has been great having you on. It really is, exactly, sort of what I'm trying to get out there. But if you'd like to reach Stevyn, if you're interested in hearing more about Grow Wellthy, her firm, you can reach her at Stevyn, Stevyn, at growwellthy.com, which is growwellthy.com. You can also take the wealth quiz on her website, growwellthy.com/quiz. And we'll put this information in the show notes so you have all that information. If you yourself have a struggle, you wish to share your experiences or your story with me, or to help others in similar situations, please feel free to reach out to me at diana.britton@informa.com. I want to thank you for listening to the podcast. And, where there's healing, there is hope. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to The Wellthy Advisor, a podcast focused on advisors' personal well-being and healing. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of wealthmanagement.com. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional advice. Always seek the advice of your healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your particular situation.